Synchro summoning has changed. Or has it? I'm Hunter the Demon Prince, and I'm back from the warp to talk about a change I've noticed in our favorite complicated children's card game. Are these changes good for Yu-Gi-Oh? Will it bring about its destruction? Or is it just a natural shift for a card game in an eternal format? From what were good cards in 2008 to great cards in the modern day, there has been a fundamental shift in Synchro Monsters, and not just from power creep. I want to share my thoughts on what I've noticed modern decks are synchro summoning, while also predicting what the future of synchro archetypes might hold. Now, I do want to preface this by saying, no, I don't think modern Yu-Gi-Oh is dying. Are there issues? Yes. Is the format in a weird place right now? Depending on when you're watching, but more than likely. Regardless, as time passes, we'll get new sets, ban lists, and better support for older decks or new archetypes, which will not only expand how the game can be played, but also gives us new exciting stories and lore. We've shifted from level 6s and 8s being our main synchros we summon to level 10s being our go-to boss monsters. To understand what I mean, let's start with a brief historical overview of synchro summoning and the decks that use synchro monsters. From there, maybe you'll see my point and even share your own conclusions in the comments. Before we dive into the history of Synchro Monsters, let's make a quick detour to define what makes a good extra deck monster, so that anyone that doesn't know much about these cards can understand and categorize why a card I talk about is good. The first and most important thing is ease of summoning. No matter how good the card is, if it's a pain to summon, no one will play it. Following that, they typically fall under one or more of the following effect categories. Protection, either through a one-time effect like Stardust Dragon, or blanket protection like Chaos Angel. Disruption. This could be negation effects like Savage Dragon, but it can also be some form of quick effect removal or floodgate effect like Shen Shen. Extension, like Martial Metal Marcher or Junk Speeder, monsters that can extend your plays by summoning or reviving extra monsters, but it can also be draw effects like Hyper Librarian. Removal, any type of card that outs your opponent's problem card like Black Rose Dragon or Scrap Dragon. OTK potential / assistance, like old school Colossal Fighter with Armory Arm or more modern Transcendent Dragion. And or Other. Other is a very small card pool, usually reserved for cards that don't entirely fit in the previous categories, but their effects are good enough to either end up on the ban list or very archetype specific. Think of Tempest Magician or Omega, both serving time for being part of heinous F2Ks. You might think of additional categories or even subcategories when considering how good a card is. That's great. Understanding how a card is useful in your deck is a great way to deck build and test new ideas, so you don't lose because your board got outed or you got floodgated. If you're liking the content so far, don't forget to like and subscribe before we go into the history of Synchro Monsters. Thousands of years ago, when man first discovered fire, this is true, I was alive back then. In the far-off ancient past of 2008, we were first introduced to Synchro Monsters in the TCG, with Goyo Guardian, Black Rose Dragon, and the legendary Stardust Dragon. The Synchro mechanic started off strong, and these cards are still considered playable to these days, aside from Goyo Guardian, which later down the road got an errata, making him difficult to summon. As the years went by, Yu-Gi-Oh started slowly switching to more archetype-focused strategies instead of just being a pile of good cards. Even then, people still occasionally played powerful generic synchros like Brionac and Scrap Dragon in just about any deck that could make them. When Dragon Ruler format reared its ugly tier 0 head, people still played generic 8s like Crimson Plater, which completely countered their opponent's strategy. When we reached the Pendulum era, Pendulum decks abused Ignister Prominence and Omega to the point where Ignister Prominence was limited for almost 5 years. 8 years after the initial release of Synchro Monsters, Synchros finally got their first easy to summon negation with Crystal Wing Dragon. This powerhouse became even easier to summon when the Wind Witch engine was released, creating decks like Invoked Wind Witch, or decks that really don't play on their turn, like Trap decks. Going into Master of 4, you couldn't just summon a bunch of Synchro Monsters anymore, which practically killed most Synchro-focused sets. Summoning enough Link Monsters to make enough zones for your Synchros became all but impossible. But not all was lost, as eventually we got a new powerhouse that wanted you to play Link Monsters, with Borreload Savage Dragon. Any spare Link in the graveyard for an attack boost and negation. While this card wasn't super playable until decks like early Dragon Link became a thing, in my opinion, this monster's most powerful era wasn't even until the next Master Rule update. Speaking of the next Master Rule update, Master Rule 5 arrived and shook up the game again. Now that non-Link, non-Pendulum monsters were no longer tied to the extra monster zone and Link arrows, a myriad of decks became playable again, but they are unable to become top tier until the release of 2 of the most powerful Links ever printed, Alka-Fibrax and Auroradon. The best decks in the format became Synchro spams that turboed out crazy end boards with not only Savage Dragon, but Dragite, Herald of Arclight, and just about any other Synchro monster you could think of. Adamancipator and Synchro Eldritch were the best decks in most of 2020, and it was frustrating. By the end of 2020, all of this accumulated in one of the most powerful Synchros ever created, Chaos Ruler, the Chaotic Magical Dragon. This crazy level 8 monster made any light and or dark deck that could make it skyrocket in power, giving you the ability to potentially add a card to your hand, be linked off, then summon itself back from the grave. After that, you could use it for a powerful rank 8 Xyz, detach it, and use it again next turn. To this day, it seems to be the peak power level of any generic non-disruption style Synchro monster. In 2021, the Synchro spam decks of the COVID era were mostly dead. After 2 ban lists, cards like Block Dragon, O-Lion, and Link Crossed all got banned, making decks that puked out these previously mentioned Synchros pretty much unplayable. Now, if you didn't live through this format, be glad all these cards got banned. The COVID era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Was one of the worst formats in the game in my opinion. Eventually, the meta shifted from Synchro Turbo to a myriad of new decks, from Drytron summoning Herald of Ultimateness to Tri-Brigade's ultra-consistent removal and OTK combos. The format was very different. The degenerate Synchro spam decks were out, replaced mostly by consistent mid-range decks. Now, I can't forget to mention about Virtual World, which was running around at this time as mainly a Synchro Xyz deck with an interesting twist. It played in a very different axis compared to other Synchro strategies. Unfortunately, its claim to infamy was making True King of All Calamities, which eventually got VFD banned. In June 2021, we started slowly getting powerful generic Synchro 10s being printed. Ruddy Rose Dragon arrived first, able to banish both players' graveyards while also protecting your cards from being destroyed. In October 2021, the floodgates were opened. We received the most powerful generic disruption-based Synchros ever made, Baronne de Fleur, followed by a deck that consistently make her every turn with Sword Soul. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has now shifted their focus for Synchro monsters. While yes, there are exceptions for good Synchro focused decks that play on a different axis than normal, this trend does not deviate that much. Oh, what's that? Konami needs to make Ice Barriers finally playable? Give them an easy combo to make a Synchro 10. Oh, and make that Synchro 10 fix most of their problems. Fishpun the deck, Goaty, plays on both players' turns by quick synchroing into level 6s, 8s, and most notably, 10s, as our archetype's win condition is to summon their Synchro 10 and wipe the field. And now that I think about it, at least 3 of the most recent water type decks are making Synchro 10s, excluding Sharks. Black Wings need new support and the new boss monster? Give them a level 10 that can be summoned by banishing materials from the graveyard. Now they can make other powerful Synchros that buff and protect their new boss monsters. Bystials and Branded eventually got their own Synchro 10 with this Potter. Even though Branded is a fusion deck, this gave them access to Synchro 10s with 1 Bystial and one of their virtuous starters. While yes, they do lock themselves into fusion summoning most of the time, the fact that both archetypes are designed to work together like this has to be mentioned. Later, we receive a powerful level 8 Synchro in Excel Stardust Dragon, which summons a level 2 tuner from the graveyard, just so you have an easier time making a Synchro 10. On top of that, it can bounce into Stardust Dragon, quick Synchro, and give your Synchros protection from card effects. Even after all that, a crazy new never-before card was released. The first Synchro that did not require a tuner, Chaos Angel, requires only a light or a dark monster can be treated as a tuner for its summon, giving the best attributes in the game access to a powerful Synchro monster, even though they aren't playing any tuners. While I don't dislike Chaos Angel, I do have to mention how crazy this is, as most of the decks that don't play tuners would never be able to make a Synchro, but now their decks like Runic Furhire or Thunder Dragons can make a card that's both disruption and protection, all without playing a spicy tech. I do understand the worry about what precedent this might set for other powerful set-selling Synchro monsters, but I don't think Konami will go nuts with it and make a bunch of them, as Chaos Angel was designed for an archetype. Much like Sword Soul monsters making their own tuner tokens for Synchro summoning, I wouldn't much worry about them making an archetype that mimics that playstyle that much. Maybe later down in the future. I personally wouldn't mind a Wind and Earth or Water and Fire version too. Maybe give other attributes a reason to play together more often. Does your deck mainly summon level 7s? Do you want to play a Synchro monster but level 1 monsters scare you? Well, there's a solution for you. Meet Normal Summoning and Ash Blossom. Normal Summoning and Ash Blossom can provide relief for the most bricked hands. You'll finally be given the freedom to access your extra deck in ways you didn't expect, with cards such as Baron, Changying, or any other level 10 Synchro you desire, all on top of your other plays, if you have any. Side effects from normal summoning Ash can lead to lack of important normal summons being max Z, lose duel, not having Ash monster your opponent's turn, sweaty hands, lost respect from your parents, and confusion from your opponent. Do not normal summon Ash if it won't help extend your plays, or if it's your 5th summon and your opponent has a rock, or if you're pregnant or about to become pregnant. Deck doctors recommend not letting your opponent operate heavy machinery after you normal summon an Ash, as this can cause confusion which might lead to an accident. Normal summoning an Ash Blossom is not for everyone. Ask your deck doctor before trying normal summon an Ash Blossom. Normal summoning Ash. Sometimes it's an option. Where was I? There have been other decks in the recent past that like playing level 10s, like Nadium and Super Heavy Samurai, but their focus wasn't just level 10s, but mostly any good synchro they could make. At the time of writing this, most synchro decks outside of Tenpai and Centurion aren't really top tier right now. While Centurion likes making level 12s, Tenpai is a powerful go second deck that likes their level 10 dragons. Even after a couple of ban lists lowering their consistency, Tenpai duelists are out here on some crazy copium, creating abominations by gluing Bisteels and Fiendsmiths onto their fire dragons, just so they can go second, hand trap their opponent 4 times, slap their opponent, put their opponent's card sleeves on backwards, drink a mix of bleach and meth to transcend into their final form and fight God. Some might ask, is this it? Is this the future of good Synchro Monsters? Is Yu-Gi-Oh going to keep making only level 10s be good? Nah, probably not. I doubt Konami is done making good lower level synchros, but we might even see a meta deck that plays like Earth's Arctic. But now I hope you can see how I came to this conclusion. Synchro summoning has changed, and I don't think it's a bad thing. Sometimes a card might be a bit overtuned and end up getting banned, but that's the nature of an eternal format. Now, there can be an argument that Yu-Gi-Oh is focusing more on summoning level 12s, but I feel like that's mostly because of Centurion and just how powerful Crimson Dragon is. Most importantly, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Are all these powerful level 10 synchros good for the game, or is the game forever ruined? Thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you all next time.